Hi, everyone. Jeff Goins here, author, blogger, and speaker. And I want to tell you about three things that are really important to beginning a writing career. And there are three things that I wish somebody would have told me when I got started so many years ago. And before I tell you that, I have to tell you the mistake that I was making that you might be making too. And the reason that I know it's a mistake that a lot of writers and communicators and bloggers make is because I made it. And the mistake is really simple. It's this: you focus on wanting to be good enough instead of focusing on finding the audience that's already waiting for you. And so what I mean by that is a lot of writers that I talk to, a lot of speakers, a lot of people who want to be writers or improve their writing, they come to me and they say, I don't know if I'm good enough. Or can you help me figure out how to be a better writer? And the problem with that, although the motivation is good, is that it's the wrong question because it's the wrong idea. And how do I know that's the wrong idea? Well, tell me, is Ernest Hemingway a good writer in your book? Because in some people's books, he's not, and he wasn't. Or maybe James Joyce, who, when he was writing, his wife said that he made no sense at all. She compared his work to the work of a child, and most of his contemporaries criticized him. And then many years later, he was called one of the most important people of the 20th century. So my point is that good writing is not always noticed until later, and that good writing is relative. So I think it's less important to want to be good and more important to want to focus on being effective, which is to say, how do you write a message? How do you write a story that's going to connect with an audience now? Because some people will like it and some people won't. And that's true for some of the world's most popular writers and speakers today. So stop thinking about being good, because everybody's definition of good is different, especially when it comes to creativity and artistic endeavors, and start focusing on being effective. And how can you do that? Well, by doing these three things that I kind of discovered on accident when I started my writing career a few years ago. The first key that I learned was the step that I took that I encourage people to take. And it was very simple. It's this: I became a writer. And I know that sounds kind of silly, because how do you become a writer? But really what that meant was I started calling myself a writer. And when I began to call myself a writer, something funny kind of happened. Other people began to acknowledge me as a writer too, because I was calling myself that, and they started introducing me to their friends or relatives or whatever, and they would say, well, meet my friend Jeff, he's a writer. And I didn't have any business cards, and I didn't have a job description that said writer, but that was who I wanted to be. And so I started calling myself that, and I started believing it, and slowly that reality started to come into fruition. So as I was calling myself a writer, and as people were calling me a writer, there started to be this expectation on myself that, man, I'm calling myself a writer, I better act like it. And so I started writing better work as a result of it. I started getting up every morning at 5 a.m. And putting my fingers on the keyboards, groggily typing away, because I didn't want to be called a liar. I didn't want people to say, well, you call yourself a writer, but you're not writing anything. So it really forced me to bring my A game every single day, which allowed me to focus and hone my craft. So that was the first step. The first key was to become a writer, and it really begins with that affirmation of believing that you already are one. The second thing that I started doing when I launched my blog, because I didn't really know what to write about, because there were so many things that I could have written about, and I tried that before and I hadn't seen much success. So the second key to beginning to build an audience for me was sharing what I knew. And so what did I know at the time? Not much, but I did know how to help other writers. It was something that I'd done in my day job for a number of years, and I wanted to become a better writer, so I was reading a lot of content, I was practicing a lot, and so that was where my mind was right then and there, and so I started talking about writing. So by no means do I think every writer needs to write about writing. That was something that I kind of fell into, but it was also something that I knew, and that's what you need to do. If you're listening to this trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do to get started as a writer, write what you know. And so for me, that was the topic of writing. It was the topic of life change and how you can start living a different life. And for me, that was this process of becoming a writer. So I was writing about this thing that was happening to me. So as I was sharing what I knew, I released a manifesto, released a short statement of purpose that said, here's what I'm about, and I hope it can help you. And as I did that, I paid attention, as I put stuff out there that was hopefully helpful to people, I paid attention to what resonated with people. And when I noticed that something struck a chord, I would explore that topic a little bit more deeply and keep going. And as I did that, that led me to this third key, which was I built a community. And so what that means is I launched a blog, and people started coming and reading the content that I was publishing. Again, I was just writing what I knew and learning a lot as I did it, and kind of paying attention to what people were connecting with. But as that community started to grow, I realized that there were ways that I could grow grow that community even more. And that really came down to being generous. So I mentioned that I released a manifesto, a short statement of purpose. It was an ebook that I gave away in exchange for people's email addresses. And within the course of a week, I had my email subscriptions go from 75 people to over 1,000, all because of a decision to be generous. And I continue to find ways to serve my audience, found ways to be generous to them. I encouraged them to be generous. So I would give them articles or ebooks or whatever, and I would say, feel free to share this with your friends. And one of the things that I've learned through this process is generosity begets more generosity. So if you help other people, they're going to want to use that information to help even other people, and that help is going to find a way to come back to you. What goes around comes around, as my dad used to tell me when I was growing up, and it's true. So you can build a community by being generous, by encouraging other people to be generous, to share your content, put it out there. That allows your brand, your reach to extend even further. And lastly, you can build a community by being exclusive. Now, I say that and I sort of wince because what I don't mean is that you build a community based on who isn't allowed in. But if you just say, hey, this is for everybody, or I want everybody to read my blog, then nobody's going to read it. But if you focus exclusively on a single topic or idea or area of passion, what you'll find is the people that agree with you, the people that really resonate with your worldview, they're going to be psyched. They're going to want to tell other people about it. And you're going to find out what I found out, which is that even though you think you're special or unique, that there are actually a lot of people out there just like you who think a lot of the same ways about certain things that you think and feel and believe. And when you kind of draw that line in the sand, you say, here's what I believe, and there is a little bit of exclusivity, not because you're trying to push people away, but because you're trying to say, here's what I stand for, it will attract an audience. So, in conclusion, don't focus so much on being good. Focus on being effective. And how do you do that? By exploring these three keys. First, by becoming a writer through that declaration of saying, I am a writer. I'm going to start acting like it. Second, by sharing what you know. Not just writing what you know, but sharing it, putting it out there, and finding ways for it to help people, paying attention to how they connect and resonate with that content. And lastly, by building a community through generosity and exclusivity by saying, here's what I'm about, and if that's not for you, that's okay, because hopefully it's for somebody out there. And I guarantee you it is, because if you are 1 in a million, and there are over 7 billion people in the world right now, then that means there are 7,000 people, a tribe of people, waiting for you to connect with them. The question is, are you going to reach them? Or are you going to wait like I did for many, many years? I hope not. That's why I started this online course, Tribe Writers, to help writers and communicators use words to reach the audience that their message deserves. So if you want to know more about that, check out tribewriters.com, and there's plenty of information there. If you're watching this video on that site, just scroll down and find out more about how you can enroll. Thanks.